welcome back into Buckeyes Battle Cry. Of course, Peter and Rob here with our season prediction show. This is going to be a big time. We're going through Ohio State, our expectations for the offense, defense, special teams, record prediction. Of course, we're going to talk the Power Four conferences, who's going to make the title games. And then naturally, we've got to talk the playoffs, first ever 12-team playoffs, Rob. Man, it's exciting times in college football. The season's almost here. A few more days to wait to see our Buckeyes on the field. What you thinking?
Man, the expectations for this season are an extreme high, and you know what? I have to blame the media, but here are my expectations.
Yeah, what do you want to see?
I want to see more from the edge position, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. I mean, they need to start proving their worth, proving their 5 stars, their ranking, and their recruiting class. They were the 2 top edges, not only the 2 top edges in their class, but they were in the top 5 in terms of overall rankings. So I want to see a lot of those pressures, the quarterback pressures turn to sacks. I want to see Sawyer be able to, build off of it, how the season ended with when he had 5 sacks against Missouri. I think it was
sacks,
3 to 5.
Dominant game though,
yeah. But I definitely want to see more from JT Tuimoloau. He hasn't really shown up. I mean, played out of his mind since the Penn State game. Not really worried about our the secondary. They pretty much the same people are back. With the addition of Caleb Downs, they were the number 1 passing defense in the country last season, giving up no more than 20 pass yards. Actually, not 20. Like, yeah.
I know what you mean.
A throw of more than 20 yards. I meant to say.
Right, all season long.
I want to see more. Look, the linebackers will be able to fill the gap. I mean, we saw that with Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers, but I want to see I think in terms of dropping back and be able to for the crossing routes, especially what Colson Loveland did to us last season, completely obliterated Eichenberg and Steel Chambers when they tried to drop back and into pass coverage. But I think that Cody Simon and Sonny Styles are going to be the perfect fit. In terms
They're much more athletic and mobile and agile for sure.
Yeah. Still expect, not really worried about the defensive line. I mean, they lost Michael Hall, but good players are coming back. You have
Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton stepping in the D tackle.
And Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Stepping in those positions. I mean, they were starters last season, but so for offense, I want to see more from the offensive line. This is a put up or shut up year for Justin Fry. The offensive line has been the weak point for the last 2 years. The line of scrimmage is how games are won in the Big Ten, especially against Michigan.
No question about it.
Especially like when they go up against Michigan, they're going to be going up against possibly the best defensive line in the country, especially having to guard Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. So Will Howard, it looks like he has evolved into a quarterback that, Ohio State doesn't need an elite quarterback this year. I mean, he's going to fill that role. He's going to be a game manager. He's going to make plays when it's needed. He's going to make smart decisions, and he's also a great leader, and he actually has wheels. So I'm expecting out of Chip Kelly's offense that they're going to run him some. In terms of the wide receivers, not really worried about the wide receivers. JJ Smith it was announced that JJ Smith was put. He's going to be a starter. He's solidified as a starter, so that tells me it's going to be Emeka Buka, Carnell Tate, and JJ Smith.
Yes, sir.
Rotations: Jalen Ballard, Brandon Ennis.
Yep. Potentially Mylan Graham.
Yeah, potentially Mylan Graham. Been hearing good things about Mylan Graham. He's not
Another 5-star.
he's a he's like a step away from being into that rotation.
Yeah.
Running backs.
Okay.
So Travion Henderson and Quishon Junkins, there's no reason why they can't have two 1,000-yard rushers. In terms of the top, so there was a
That would
release
be
of
awesome.
the top 10 running backs in the nation, and Junkins and Henderson, they were both in the top 10. They followed suit with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. So I think they'll have the best backfield in the country. It just depends if Chip Kelly runs the right plays, and also it's falling on Justin Fry. Like, these running backs will go as far as the offensive line does. So a lot of pressure
Of
on
course.
Justin Fry in terms of development and preparing for each game. So
yeah. Two things I want to add about the offense and just get some input here. I read an article on 11 Warriors, and it stated every single decision Will Howard makes is an RPO, a run pass option. Every single play Ohio State runs is a run pass option. That is a drastic difference from Day's offense. And it's going to be interesting to see that implemented. And then in terms of the running backs, it's going to be fun to see this is an interesting discussion in my mind. Who takes the first snap and who gets more snaps? In my opinion, Trevion, the captain, should take the first snap. Now, who I think will get more carries throughout the season? I think it will be Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah, I mean, you have a thunder and lightning scenario.
Oh yeah,
and I don't like. I think Junkins actually. I don't even know which one's gonna be the thunder, which one's gonna be like. They're both fast. They're both athletic.
well yeah,
They can definitely hit the home run, getting a ball out of the backfield. Remember the first game of Travion Henderson's career in 2021 against Minnesota. I mean, he just bolted and it was off to the races all the way to the end zone. He took that. It was like a screen pass. He just bolted for the end zone.
He just took off. Yeah, he's an electric player, man, and it's fun. He runs really hard. He doesn't break a lot of tackles, however. So I think in short and goal line situations, you're going to see a lot more Quinshon than we will Trev. I mean, he's a much bigger back, even though he's not a huge back himself. So,
yeah, I mean, we could have lightning. I mean, they're both quick. They're both shifty. They are freak of nature athletes. They both had over 1,000 yards on their respective teams.
Yeah. Well, you know what's crazy, man? They both had 3,000 yards from scrimmage in their careers so far. That's remarkable to think about. Like, we have 6,000 yards total and over 70 touchdowns in our backfield. That's remarkable, man. It's going to be fun to watch them eat this season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obvious that, Lane Kiffin was upset that Junkins left. Jackson Dart is impartial, saying Junkins is selfish and demanded that the offense revolve around him. That is remained to be seen. But I mean, if there was some selfishness, I guarantee you that Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are going to shut that down right away. I mean, Ryan Day seems like a no nonsense type of coach, and no bashes to Urban Meyer, but under Ryan Day, I don't think any players have gotten into any legal trouble. I mean, I know you had the two cornerbacks who were accused of sexual assault and kicked off the team, but later vindicated of those charges. But other than that, I mean, we're not seeing a type of Georgia teams where you're having players act stupid behind a wheel.
Yeah. The players don't run the show at Ohio State. And I'm not saying they do at Georgia, but it certainly seems a little less controlled down there in the locker room in Athens than in Columbus.
Yeah, but so I also want to talk about JJ Smith a bit, expectations for him.
What do you see him doing this year?
I mean, he'll go as far as his quarterback lets him. If
Yeah,
if Will Howard starts to capitalize on the long ball, or even able to throw short jump balls in the end zone, I'm expecting. I mean, the amount of hype, the amount of tape that I've seen of this guy. I mean, even in high school and
yeah.
just seeing in practice. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he's going up against some of the best cornerbacks in the nation, the number one pass defense in the country last
Sure.
season. It seems like the Ohio State secondary, they're gonna have they're gonna have a good amount of draft picks, but seeing this tape, I mean, he gets the best in that time. This dude just a freshman. I think he's the fastest Ohio State player to shed his black stripe.
Yeah, that's a big honor.
So I mean, I'm expecting great things. I'm gonna say that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets close to 1,000 yards and has about 7-8 touchdowns.
Yeah, I could definitely see a touchdowns in that range. It's maybe you saw this video today on Instagram about JJ Smith on Ohio State's official account, but they kept on showing him just grabbing the ball out of the air, just grabbing it. His hands seem like suction cups. Like he's just doing these one-handed catches, these two-handed leaps, up over these elite defensive backs that you mentioned
Yeah,
that Ohio State has in their secondary.
yeah, not like trying to hype him up even more. Just that when you said, splitting two defenders and getting those jump balls, there's only one player that we know of who did that consistently, and that was Megatron for the Detroit
Sure.
Lions, Calvin Johnson.
Whew.
I mean, he even did it in college. So
Yeah.
JJ Smith, he's got a lot of potential, but I mean, he he could end up being the number one overall pick when his time comes, depending on, is if he lives up to this hype. So, and also I hope he's ignoring everything that he's heard about him, and he stays humble, and he realizes that it's all about the team,
Yeah.
and everything else will take care of itself.
There's so much hype and so much expectation in Buckeye Nation. So many polls, even once again on 11 Warriors today. I saw that one of the poll questions was, will JJ Smith end up being Ohio State's all-time leading receiver when all things are said and done? And obviously, a lot weighs into that: injury health, quarterback play, like you mentioned. But he's definitely going to be in consideration. We've had some phenomenal wideouts, and still Michael Jenkins is the number one receiver for receptions, or for receiving yards. KJ Hill for receptions. But Emeka, with 1,042 this year, will break Michael Jenkins' all-time receiving record. And then maybe JJ 3 is down the road from now, he breaks it as well. But I did want to loop back to the defense real quick before we give our season predictions for the regular season and what we expect for Ohio State through 12 games. But it's interesting because some people still question the ability for the Buckeyes and the Silver Bullets to stop the run. And we see Sonny Styles and Cody Simon and this defensive front with tons of talent. What do you think is going to be different this year for Ohio State that's going to allow them to not just be elite in the secondary, but be elite against the run and really shut down the Oregons and the Wolverines of the world?
So I think their linebackers are a lot more versatile than last season. They seem more athletic, quicker, just raw talent. And in terms of versatile, I mean, you have Sonny Styles, who was in the secondary last season, so clearly he's going to be able to drop back into pass coverage and pick up those tight ends, especially when we play against Michigan. I think they should put him on Colston Loveland. But I expect Cody Simon to be able to drop back in pass coverage. It just seems like last season, love Tommy Hitman Eichenberg.
You too.
Steel Chambers, he was good, but they just seem like just a one-show pony in terms of just being able to stop the run and being able to fill the gap that opens.
Yeah. They were really good linebackers, but they seemed more like mid 2000s type linebacker archetype, like a Tim Tressel type linebacker, like a Laurinaitis or AJ Hawk. Really, really good against the run, but not having fluid hips and not being agile and mobile. To change directions quickly. Sonny Styles clearly excels in that. He showed that in the secondary last year, and now he's learned this new position. And I'm excited to see how I guess their nickname for Tyreek and Ty Hamilton is TNT. I read earlier this week, and I'm excited. They're a little bit beefier than Mike Hall was on the defensive front, and so I think with those factors combined, and of course Caleb Downs being an elite open field tackler himself, I think the run game defense is going to be much improved, like drastically improved. So what do you think?
I mean, yeah, they were 40th last season,
right,
in terms of run defense, and that's just not good enough,
especially in a run heavy conference, right?
It's not, yes, especially in a run heavy conference. I mean, I don't know. I don't think. I mean, I expect Nebraska to pass a lot. I expect Oregon to pass a lot.
Yes,
I expect. Yeah. I mean, Penn State, they're gonna switch it up a bit. They're gonna do what works for them, but at the end of the day, they could end up running more than passing.
Well, that is an interesting thing you bring to the table, because obviously the Pac-12 members, all 4 new members, they come from conferences used to passing the ball all over the yard, and USC and Miller Moss and Lincoln Riley are certainly going to do that as well. So things, as the regionalization of the sport is kind of going away, styles are being impacted and introduced into the conferences that these teams are getting added to, and that's kind of fun to see. So I expect a lot more Big Ten quarterbacks to be drafted over the next decade than the previous decade, for sure. I mean, Ohio State and Michigan were the only first teams that have first-round quarterbacks drafted in this last decade out of the Big Ten, of any team.
But if they, well, I mean, there's no question they're more likely going to end up number 1 in pass defense. But if they could produce a top 10, top 20 rush defense, I think that, I mean, that would be a big improvement from last season. And to me, that was the difference against Michigan.
It certainly was, man, and it's going to be fun to see how Jim Knowles, year 3, how that goes, and I think it's just only getting better from here. So he's got elite talent at his disposal. So record prediction time now. I think we've discussed this before in our lives, but what do you think Ohio State's record is going to be in the regular season, and do they make the Big Ten title game?
I think they're going to be 11-1, and this is why I want them to be 11-1. I want them to lose that game in Eugene I want them to lose that night game in Eugene against Oregon, because you know what, it's a lot of hype right now, and I think it'd be good for them, because then the rest of the season they'll play with a chip on their shoulder and possibly obliterate teams. And, especially against Michigan, I want them to know what losing is, so it will never happen again. Then they'll beat Michigan. They'll win the Big Ten championship. They'll play Oregon again. And you know what? It's tough to beat teams twice in a season. And it's
extremely tough.
I'm going to say that Oregon Ohio State game is going to be really close. I think it's going to be 6.3 difference.
I gotcha.
And again, like, Ohio State's going to be playing the chip on their shoulder the rest of the season, and I think they'll get redemption in that matchup, and then we'll talk about the playoffs in a bit.
So you're predicting no trouble with the Wolverines this season, or at least a win for sure is what you're predicting over Michigan this time in Columbus.
Here's the thing: if they go into Michigan undefeated and they just been obliterating teams
for the 3rd year in a
row, pretty much, then it's just like, what if Michigan isn't that great? I mean, what if Michigan goes in that game at 8-3,
Hmm.
and Ohio State doesn't take them very seriously?
I don't think that's ever a problem at Ohio State, but interesting.
It's a different era. This is Ryan Day football. It's a way different era in Ohio State football. But I mean, I could see that happening. Like,
Man,
they've fallen off.
interesting.
They're 8-3, and we're just gonna we're
Even after
undefeated.
3 consecutive losses, do you think there's a potential that Ohio State would take Michigan lightly?
I don't want to take anything for granted, dude. Like you just never know. You know how a lot of undefeated teams are who go into the last game or so, or there's always that one game that they that they just don't take seriously. They end up losing. I mean, look at what happened to remember Tim Tebow's famous speech after they lost to Ole Miss?
Yeah, that's
If
not a
if
rival though.
if I but here's what I'm saying, Peter. What I'm saying is, if they wouldn't have lost that game, I don't think they won the national championship, because they played with a chip on their shoulder the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, even going back to 2021, when Michigan lost to Michigan State, with that comeback, they played with a chip on their shoulder the rest of the season. It did them some good, but of course,
Mm-hmm.
until they ran to Georgia, and even 2021 Georgia,
Yeah.
they got embarrassed against Alabama in the SEC championship game, and then they played with a chip on their shoulder in the playoffs, and they won it all.
Hmm.
So
yeah, no,
I
you
mean,
do raise some fair points. It's
you can't.
interesting. I'd much rather lose the Oregon game than the Michigan game. That's for sure. Even though they're a brand new member of the conference, that would give them 2 consecutive wins over Ohio State. Um, I won't go as far as to saying I want them to lose that game, but I can see how it would refocus them and resharpen the tools in the shed. The only thing that would give me a lot of cause for concern if they were to drop the Oregon game is it's our first test of the season. Like, we don't play anybody before we play Oregon. We have a decent test against the Iowa Hawkeyes, but that's in Columbus. This is our first real road game. It would cause me, and honestly the rest of the nation, to have to kind of write Ohio State off. Now, inward in the team, I don't think they would do that.
And there it is,
from the
dude.
outward expectations, Ohio State would be written off for sure.
And there it is, Peter. It would raise concern of the rest of the nation. The Ohio State Buckeyes have bulletin board material, and they play with the chip on their shoulder the rest of their year. They roll through the rest of the season. They beat Michigan. They play Oregon again in the Big Ten championship, get their revenge, and then they make a deep run in the playoffs.
My hope is that this team is pissed off enough from the last 3 seasons that nothing is going to distract them. If they don't have enough fire from what's occurred over the last 3 seasons and how their coach has been attacked relentlessly online, then, in my opinion, they're not championship material. But we're definitely going to find out what the character and grit of this team is when they travel to Eugene.
It's not over until it's over, man. It's not over until it's over. I mean, I'm not look, that night game in Eugene, that's gonna be a tough atmosphere. It's a really talented Oregon team who has played the transfer portal really well, and in terms of recruiting, they have a really good coach. And again, it's at Oregon at night.
Half the game, yeah.
We're not so blessed to be able to get a noon game, our first test, like Michigan is, where they play Texas at noon.
They're getting thrown into the fire for sure.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a battle. It's gonna be a battle, and I have us as of right now. We'll see how teams play and how they perform these first 6 weeks of the season before they meet in week 7. Before I make my official prediction, but as of right now, I do have Ohio State losing to Oregon in Eugene. I think Dan Lanning finally gets his first big win as a head coach, and he gets a little bit monkey off his back, and Ryan Day gets more pressure mounted on his back, and the monkey continually weighted on his shoulders because the media will be relentless if we lose in Oregon, because that'd be another top 10 team that we drop a game to. But it could happen. They are very talented, and I'm not taking anything for granted out there. It's going to be a dogfight.
You have them losing?
Oh yeah, I've said that for a couple weeks now, but
okay,
I don't want them to lose. So that's the
I don't want them. Well, I said I want them to lose.
I know what you meant.
Sometimes I kind of don't, but
no, I mean, you have some good points.
You could be right though. I mean, if the last 3 years of losing to Michigan, having your coach your coach criticized in the media nonstop, and especially like insults coming from different fan bases, many different directions. If that doesn't motivate you to just play with the chip on your shoulder since day one, you could be right. Maybe they're not national championship material. But I'm gonna stick with my point.
Yeah.
I think it would be good for them to lose a game, so that especially against Oregon, the press will be talking, and just the nonstop Ohio State soft. Ryan Day is a third base coach. They're never going to win anything, and then they just steamroll the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it transpires, man. Dogfight in Eugene, big game on the line in the middle of the season. And crazy atmosphere in Autzen Stadium. I also have them going 11-1, and I tried my hardest to convince myself that Penn State was going to make the Big Ten championship game, but I just can't do it, man. I don't quite trust Drew Allar yet. I need to see it in a big game, to believe it from him. I think he will take a step forward. Don't get me wrong. And their schedule is super, super, super easy. But I do have it being a rematch for Ohio State Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. In Indy is a long way from Eugene, and it's a lot closer to Columbus, and we are certainly familiar with that experience and that environment. So yeah, I think we come out and top in the rematch and become Big Ten champions.
I mean, like we've actually like been there 3 or 4 times, so we know what it's all about.
It's a whole new experience for the Ducks. They've never played in that stadium ever, and the bright lights can do a lot to some teams and players. So we'll see what happens in that one. So we have Ohio State and Oregon out of the Big Ten. Now let's transition to the rest of the Power Four conferences, the ACC, the Big 12, and of course the SEC, where it just means more. Let's start first off with the SEC. Who do you see making the championship game down in Atlanta?
I have Texas and Georgia.
Texas and Georgia. The big boys, the Longhorns, come into the conference and make the title game. Okay. Who do you see prevailing?
I see Georgia prevailing. I know Quinn Ewers is possibly the best quarterback in the nation. Texas has a good defensive line. They have a good offensive line. They got Isaiah Bond out of the transfer portal. Unfortunately, what's his face? The running back.
Baxter.
Yeah, CJ Baxter's out for the season, but they have a 5-star who's right behind him. So
hopefully he's ready to perform.
But I just think that this is Kirby Smart's time to take Nick Saban's place. I know there's still a lot of hype from, about Alabama, but I'm not buying it. I mean, there's a big difference between Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. I think Kirby Smart's going to take his place and solidify himself as the big dog in the SEC now. I know, like, here's the dumb argument about this against the, Georgia, Alabama. People are saying Kirby Smart is 1-5 against Alabama. No, he's 1-5 against Nick Saban coach Alabama. You have a change of the guard. You have Kalen DeBoer coaching the Alabama Crimson Tide. And let's be honest, who's a better coach, Kirby Smart or Kalen DeBear? I'm going to go with Kirby Smart 10 out of 10 times. So I don't want to hear about, oh, Kirby Smart is 1-5 against Alabama. A Nick Saban coached Alabama. You can go now.
It's a different program for sure, and they're different leadership and a lot of talent left, and then they did add a lot of talent back into their stable of horses. Still a top 3 roster in all of college football according to every recruiting analytic and everything like that. Of course, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State; those are the top 3 in the nation. No, we've had this discussion before, and I actually have a different perspective. I think a shock and surprise, since there are no divisions, Missouri only plays one tough opponent in their SEC conference slate, and they return an astronomical amount of talent, including the starting quarterback. I do believe, I am buying into the hype that Mizzou, with their schedule and with as much returning talent as they have, will actually, shockingly, make the SEC championship.
And they have, who's that wide receiver they have? Luther
Burden. He's the speed demon. He didn't really do much against Ohio State, although he did have that one catch for a touchdown. But I believe that was his only catch. But I think he's a phenomenal athlete and phenomenal wide receiver, and he'll exploit a lot of defenses in the SEC this year. So I think the Tigers make their, I think it's second ever SEC championship game, because I'm almost certain they made the conference title game the first year they were in the SEC as well, back in 2012. And then on the other side, this is controversial, and I don't have a ton of data or explanation for not picking Georgia. They clearly have the talent to be undefeated and make that SEC championship game. Their schedule is absolutely insane. However, they play 5 top 15 teams. And they certainly have the talent to win every one of those games. There's no question about it. I just think, personally, and this is a complete outsider's perspective, not being in Georgia or anywhere near the program, I just think that locker room's a complete disaster right now. And they lost Bowers, they lost Ladd McConkey, and they lost who was going to be wide receiver 1 this year, Ra Thomas, got kicked off the team. Beck is a great quarterback. He's a great leader, 72% completion percentage last year. That's a lot of holes to fill. Now, Georgia's a program that reloads. They don't rebuild. They just straight up reload. They do. But I don't see the team chemistry in that locker room from all the reports I'm reading. And it's a controversial pick, but I am picking Bama. Bama versus Mizzou, and I think Bama triumphs in the SEC championship game. So that's what I had predicting coming out of the SEC. Controversial. I had Georgia going 10-2 and not qualifying for the SEC championship game. So we shall see how that transpires. And I will admit it, that is definitely what I'm rooting for. But I do think, you have every valid point to think that Kirby Smart can take over and fill that power void in the SEC conference, because, I really don't have an argument against that, except that the locker room is a mess, in my opinion. So,
if you were to look at it, if Urban Meyer was able to do what he did at Florida with his locker room, we all know the aftermath of everything, or even during the season. I think that kind of wouldn't matter.
Well, I think this is my last point on this, and we'll move to the next conference. I think Georgia's at the point where Urban was at in 2010, where they go 8-5, completely kind of fall apart. Now, Georgia's not going to go that bad. They're not going to have that kind of a season. Like I said, 10-2. But I think the locker room is gone, and we'll see. That's a bold prediction. I know it's contrary to all the recruiting stars and recruiting talent. I know that. It's contrary to even some of my mind is trying to tell me. But I truly think.
And here's one more counterpoint. It wasn't actually that Urban. It wasn't actually the players. It was more that Urban Meyer was checked out at Florida. That was it. If your coach isn't all in, how do you expect your players to be all in? Kirby Smart is all in.
All right, we're gonna find out. We're gonna see how the season unfolds. You got them at 12-0, 13-0 win the SEC championship. I got them at 10-2 and playing in the New Year's Six game. But we'll see how it transpires. Now coming out of the ACC, man, these next two conferences are a little tougher to pick in my opinion, the ACC and the Big 12. But let's briefly mention the ACC, who we think might come out of the ACC conference. A lot of people hyping up Miami, Florida, because of recruiting stars, and maybe Mario Cristobal finally gets it, but I don't buy into it just yet. Who do you think comes in the ACC championship game representing their respective universities?
Man, this is a tough one because I was looking at Florida State. They dropped their game against Georgia Tech early season. Now, could they play the rest of the season with a chip on their shoulder and redeem themselves? Absolutely, they could, but that's to remain seen. Let's see them get back on track when they play against Boston College. You also have Miami. Yes, they're able to buy all these stars. Keyword buy, not earn.
Mm-hmm. That's what they've always been known for.
If you look at their winning percentage, it's over the last 3-4 years or so. I can't remember anything that Miami has done relevant since Larry Coker, and they're
it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but as long as Mario Cristobal is the coach, I don't think they're gonna do much. He doesn't make the best decisions. Again, funny we talk about Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And he blew it against Georgia Tech. All he had to do was nail the ball. He ran it. He fumbled the running back fumbled the ball. Georgia Tech gets the ball back, and they literally score the next play with 22 seconds to go.
It was a pretty hysterical moment last year.
And then they get blitzed by Rutgers, pretty much considered the doormat of the Big Ten for the past I don't know how many years. Greg Schiano's built them into a respectable team to represent the Big Ten, but still.
Mm-hmm.
But so
it's tough to come up too.
Yeah, it is. I mean, then you have Clemson.
Yeah,
we'll see how they do against Georgia. I mean, that will tell me if they've turned it around or not. I know that Dabo is not really big into the transfer portal. They've lost players, but they haven't replaced those players. So it's kind of like, what's going to happen? They have Cade Klubnik, but they don't have the same wide receivers that they used to get.
They don't have the threats at that position anymore.
Don't. You also have North Carolina. They lost Drake May.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't. But here's the other thing.
Definitely on the decline.
Don't sleep on North Carolina State.
NC State. People are talking about them too. Yeah.
Don't sleep on them. You know what? I'm going to call it right now. I can see. And did they get rid of divisions as well?
They did as well. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to say NC State and Florida State redeems themselves.
Florida State bounces back. Mike Norvell holds the locker room together, huh?
And you know what? Also, don't sleep on Louisville either.
Yes.
So
they're my prediction to win it. They're my team to win the ACC this year.
It's really, I honestly I'm ashamed of this, but I forgot about Louisville, so I'm going to change my prediction.
Yeah, they fought Florida State tooth and nail last year in the conference championship game in Jeff Brom's first season in Louisville. They beat Notre Dame. They're a strong team, man, and I see them continuing to build down there in Louisville, and I see them knocking off. I also will shockingly pick Florida State to bounce back. I think Mike Norvell still has some things to prove as a head coach, but I think he took a roster that wasn't in the top 10 talent last year to 13-0, and obviously people write them off, and I understand why. I do too. But I think they do redeem themselves a little bit and bounce back after taking that first conference loss in the opener last week in Dublin. So I got Louisville winning the championship though over Florida State. So
all right.
And then the last conference, I think this is the toughest to predict because I think it's complete chaos in the Big 12. I think there's probably 5 or 6 different teams that could win it. I think you've got the Utah Utes. I think you've got Oklahoma State with Ollie Gordon, the Doak Walker winner last year. They've got a chance at it. Kansas has an elite roster as well now under Lance Leopold. He's doing wonders with a roster that probably shouldn't be in consideration for this conference championship, but they've got a chance. I don't know, man. There's a lot of teams, even people talking about Central Florida having a chance. So who do you think will come out of the Big 12, man? There's got to be 2 of them there, and this is hard to predict. This is probably my least confident pick, in all honesty.
You know, Oklahoma State has been so close for so long, and now that the big dogs, Oklahoma and Texas, are gone, I think that Oklahoma State's in the conference championship, and they play the Utah Utes, and Oklahoma State gets it done.
They fill that power void in the Big 12 for you. I can definitely see that, and honestly, that's pretty surprising that we both picked the same teams. I obviously want Cincinnati to do well, but their roster and their coaching staff is a complete mess ever since Fickell left. They're really on the decline, so they're not even in contention for me. You picked it too and said, I'm going to flip it. Now, I think maybe long-term Oklahoma State has the potential under Mike Gundy to be the power in that conference. But this year, I think the Utah Utes, their physical style of football, even switching conferences from the former Pac-12 now to the Big 12, I think the Utah Utes and Kyle Whittingham get it done. He's one of my favorite coaches. He gave Harbaugh a loss in his first game at Michigan, and he seems like a stand-up guy just in general. He's been there a long time, ever since Urban left in 2008. After that season, he's been there that long, 16 seasons now. And I think Utah continues their dominance in the conference, or in this new conference. So I got the Utes winning it. So that kind of transitions. We got our 4 power conference champions now, but let's get on first. Obviously, the first year of the 12-team playoff. Man, we talked a little bit about in the live. We got our conference title, so we got the 4 first-round buys. Who else fills those 8 other spots for you in your playoff bracket if you were to crystal ball it out tonight?
Man, like I said, I could see 4 Big Ten teams.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
4 SEC teams.
Yep.
And you got your Big 12 and your ACC.
That's 10 right there.
So,
there you go.
Do you want me to name the teams, or
you don't have to if you don't want to? No.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams, and then you have your one Big 12 and ACC. So
it's interesting, man, because Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, I feel like have been recruiting well the last couple of years. Now, a quarterback they've been lacking, even though they brought in some good transfers, it just hasn't materialized. Notre Dame's schedule is very easy this year, and I do see them slipping into the playoffs at 10-2. I have them as one of the lower seeds, the 11 seed, but I do think Marcus Freeman, and maybe this is a year early, it's very possible that I'm wrong on this, but their schedule sets up so nicely. If they get past Texas A&M, their only other contest, and maybe it's not even a contest now, is the Florida State Seminoles in South Bend. Every other game on their schedule, they realistically should pretty easily win, in my humble opinion. So I've got Notre Dame making it as kind of an outlier. I know not many people are picking that just yet. And then a group of 5 team I got in. It's between Memphis and Appalachian State for me. I think Appalachian State's roster is elite. Memphis, for some reason, people are talking about them. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know anything about Memphis, so I can't realistically and honestly and truthfully pick Memphis to win the group of 5 spot. But I've got Georgia making the playoffs at 10-2. So take back that New Year's 6 comment. I've got Oregon, of course, making it after losing the Big Ten title game. Missouri, after losing the SEC championship game, I got them in as 7 seed. And I have obviously Louisville winning the ACC, and then Texas, Penn State, and that rounds out my prediction for for the playoffs, man. I think it's gonna be interesting.
Wait, so why? So Memphis and who?
Memphis and Appalachian State.
Why would they get in?
A group of 5 team is guaranteed to make the playoffs every year, according to
Was that in writing?
the top 5 conference champions. The highest top 5 conference champions make the playoffs. Yes.
I mean, like they say that now, but I guarantee you someone's gonna get snubbed. Remember, Peter.
Possible.
It's all about the money and who's gonna bring more money.
I fully agree. I think I might be a little mistaken in my understanding. I think it's you have to be inside. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember reading when the playoffs were first announced that obviously the Power 4 conferences team get the first round buys, and then I heard the top 5 conference champions make the college football playoffs. But like you said, it is all about money. So I don't think a group of 5 team will make it every year. I'm gonna have to go refresh myself on exactly what the wording was, but I may be mistaken in that, like I was saying. But because obviously it is all about capitalizing and monetizing the playoffs. That's why we expanded in the first place. Tulane is another team that people are hyping up too. I don't know anything about them either, but people are talking about them as a potential dark horse for the playoffs, which I'd be surprised about too.
I mean, like since you mentioned Notre Dame, they do have. I remember they do have an easy schedule.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 Big Ten teams are we're gonna be Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. But I'm gonna take Michigan out and insert Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's what I did essentially. I think Michigan goes 9-3. I don't think they fall off the cliff, but they clearly take a step back, and I think they do miss the playoffs. I don't think they have enough quality wins. I have them losing to Ohio State. I have them losing to Oregon in the Big House, and I think they lose to another team. And I did predict Texas earlier in a different video, but I'm starting to shift my position on that football game. I think they lose to a team that
you don't think Texas is going to beat Michigan?
I think their offensive line is insane, Texas's offensive line, but I think that running back, they lost 2 of them, and I think that really affects Quinn Ewers' ability to be effective, because you take away one aspect of the game from an offense and they become one-dimensional, and that's really problematic in a loud environment. Now, I'm not going to put that in firm writing right now, but I have shifted a little bit that I think Michigan might pull that out.
I have Texas by 3, so
yeah, it's very dependent on how this Fresno State game goes. So we'll see how it goes. But that's kind of the season preview for Ohio State for 2024. Our conference predictions, our playoff predictions. Put it on the line. We put it out there. You can make fun of us. You can laugh at us at the end of the season. Come back and point fun at us. We'll see how right and how wrong we were in regards to our college football knowledge and what we think is going to happen. I'm really excited to see how the Georgia season plays out, because I think you and I are going to have some fun discussions about them this season. And so that's it for tonight for Buckeyes Battle Cry. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. You guys have a good night. Join us for live streams. We would love to have you on there as well. So we will see you on the next time. That's it tonight for Peter and Rob. We'll see you on the next one.